What to do, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut album by Akon. Basically, this album is called Trouble, and it came out in the summer of 2004. Now, Akon was a breakout kind of R&B artist that charted with a number of hit singles off this album, a few of which were Bonanza, Lonely, Locked Up, some of those type ones, but particularly one that dominated like the summer of 2004, had airplay on like BET, MTV, VH1, some of those type channels was Locked Up. It's a pretty breakout hit for Akon. Definitely like this one. Very hooky and very well put together. It's just a good quality R&B hit that was different from a lot of stuff that was going on. I would definitely say this is definitely one of the premier R&B artists to mess with from the 2000s. This was really just out of nowhere. Like you did have R. Kelly and folks like Genuine and Omarion and B2K and some of those type folks and Beyonce, but Akon was kind of like a breath of fresh air just because he was a lot more hip hop oriented, wholesomely, where it was kind of like a blend between kind of a rap record, but kind of hip hop and R&B s just in terms of how that blend kind of went. He was basically just like a rap record, just with singing on there. I like the concept behind that as more folks started to do that later, like T-Pain and some of that. Like Usher was more of a soul singer, but Akon was more hip hop oriented. So I like the concept of kind of getting that. This is a pretty revolutionary album, did a lot of damage, had multiple singles, went platinum, all that type stuff. Just did an excellent job, and it really helped catapult Akon into the popularity for a while. The thing about it, when this project first started being promoted and stuff, I really thought that Akon was going to be kind of a one-hit wonder. I thought that he was only going to get Locked Up. I'm glad that I was surprised later on as the promotion cycle kind of rolled out with songs like Lonely and Bonanza and some of those type ones that would chart later. It was interesting to kind of see some of these hits from Akon. It's just a good concept, but I look after it like this was a pretty stellar project, was a great debut, did a lot of damage, he wound up blowing up a lot more later. I reviewed Convicted, the complete edition, way back in March, so you can check out that album to kind of see the sequel to this particular project that had a load of good singles on there, including like a song with Eminem and a song with Snoop Dogg and some of those type moments. But this is definitely a pretty hit one. This is just the initial Akon. This is the stuff that, he made this probably in 2003, 2004. So this is just kind of different times where things were not quite, R&B was kind of hip hop infused, but it didn't have like quite the pure hip hop credibility. Like not every single person was recruiting like R&B singers for hooks around this time, summer 2004, late 2003 and stuff. So this is just kind of interesting. This is something that's kind of like a mini trailblazer as to how it kind of carved out the road for especially R&B, what would go on to happen throughout the rest of the 2000s. So this is definitely a central one. It's just a good peg. It's kind of like a foothold as one of the more crown jewels of that particular decade. So it just did extremely well. We'll go ahead and talk about the singles. So the first single is Locked Up, and this is the one, like I was saying, that kicked off the album. It's a very gloomy kind of club bop. It has a nice theme about it, just about being locked up and, having to deal with prison and that type of stuff. It's very hooky, and it's just vintage R&B. I would say it's vintage 2000s R&B. It's a vintage 2000s R&B hit, so it's a good concept there. Great beat on here, great kind of soul and kind of gloomy kind of beat. It's really kind of a nice highlight. It was just different from a lot of stuff that was kind of going along with R&B at the time. Very similar to 50 Cent in some senses. I feel like this is similarity to the stuff that 50 Cent was doing with Get Rich or Die Trying, just in a more R&B oriented sense. Like if Nate Dogg would have been around in 2004 and stuff and doing records like this, I think this is the sort of stuff, because Akon's pretty similar to Nate Dogg, but it was just kind of a breath of fresh air to kind of get this, just because there were some good hip hop oriented type gems that just had that street edge about it. So it's just kind of the concept that Locked Up, they could have just went with the ladies bop, nice dance club bop, something like that, but Akon chose a different angle and pulled it off pretty damn well. So it's just a nice one. This charted really high, so it's good. And the Styles P remix, I'll go ahead and talk about that now. That's the one that was initially released to like MTV and VH1 and stuff. But I would say that the Locked Up remix is just as good. It has Styles P on there, and he doesn't drop the ball in this song. It's a good concept. This is one of Styles P's biggest songs, so it's just a good concept to be able to get that one. Either version, most of the time when I think of remixes that have the same beat, I don't always graft to them. I would have to say this is a good example of one that actually enhances the song, and either version of the song is good to get. So, and oh yeah, keep in mind that I'm reviewing the European edition of this album. There's multiple editions. There are plenty of editions of this album. Some editions of this album don't have the song Ghetto on there, like the United States or the iTunes version don't have Ghetto. But then there's other versions that have like the song Easy Road, and then there's other songs that have like a number of a number of songs that replaced like songs 12 and 13 and 14 on here. So it varies. Some of the albums don't have the locked up remix with Styles P on there. So it's just a variation. I'm reviewing the European edition where there's 13 songs, and then the 12th song is I Won't, and the 13th song is Locked Up Remix. I'm reviewing the version of the album that has Ghetto, the single, on there because I like that song. Ghetto is an awesome song. I would definitely try to find the version of the album that has Ghetto on there, even if you have to get the 2005 Deluxe, which has the black album cover instead of the red one. Definitely recommend getting that. But I am eventually going to review the deluxe edition, that the black version of the album from 2005 with those 10 bonus songs. I'll review a bunch of the Akon bonus songs that aren't on this 13 song edition, but that'll be down the road. So Ghetto is the second single. This is another kind of soul and gloomy kind of club heater. This is a nice one. It's very melodic and ambient. And it's just a very sprawling bop, I would have to say. This is a good example of like some good cuts on here. If you like Locked Up, but you just want something that's not quite as prison oriented, this is a good example. Like there's some good soul and kind of gloomy cuts on this album that Akon pulls off pretty well. It's not quite emo or moody, but it does kind of have, it's not quite wholesome like emo, but it does have like a kind of moody pitch about it that just suits this album pretty damn well. So I do like the concept about that. Ghetto has a great kind of background hook on here. Like the hook is not the hook is not absolutely as good as Locked Up. There's like some background kind of vocals during the chorus and stuff and during the verses that really help enhance the song. It's just an overall kind of nice one. It is a club song. It's a nice one to kind of hear. It's just very sprawling and has a good sense of ambience about it. And Akon's melodies are off the chain on this song. So it's just an overall nice one. I mean, I can see it not out charting Locked Up and Lonely and some of those type ones, but it is a pretty good song to kind of find if you want more Akon that you don't wholesomely know about. So that's a nice one. The third single, and this is the biggest song off the album, especially on Spotify, has over 500 million plays, is Lonely. This is a soul and kind of R&B hit, and it has a striking feel of like some vintage 70s or retro kind of soul music. This feels like it was ripped out of, you can tell just by the lackadaisical kind of chipmunk soul that it kind of has. It just feels like it was ripped out of 1972 or something like that. It's something that like some of those soul artists from the 70s would have done. It's a pretty nice soul cut. It's hooky and it's contagious. I really like the energy that Akon kind of conveys on the song. He starts off kind of bored and despondent, but he gets some jive to him later on as the song progresses. It's just a very clever one and it works extremely well. It's just an easy highlight. One of the best songs on the album. Great single, great tied up kind of song. Definitely would have to say. The fourth single is Belly Dancer Bonanza. This is another real nice one. This is a boppish kind of club bubbler. I would definitely say it's got some similar vibes to Smack That. This is like an earlier rendition where Smack That was on the second album. This is like like if you like Smack That, but you want like another club bop similar to that, this is like Belly Dancer Bonanza is like a version of that song just without Eminem on there. So it's just kind of a good club bop just to kind of get, it's very uppity and snappy, and it's a snappy and kind of crunk, festive kind of jive of a song. I definitely feel like this is a pretty nice one. I mean, Akon can do some of these club bops pretty well, so it's a good change of pace. Like I feel like Locked Up and Ghetto are both some, I feel like Locked Up and Ghetto are some club cuts also, but those are just more sullen and gloomy. And even Lonely can be played out and about. That's a good social one also, but it's just kind of a more gloomy one. But three gloomy songs in a row, I feel like Bonanza is a good, refreshing kind of change of pace that just has like a good kind of jive towards it. It's just kind of a thrilling kind of club bop that has you going out and about and having a good time. So it's a nice one. And then Pot of Gold is the fifth single. This is one that doesn't get really talked about as much. This one didn't chart in America that well. This is kind of one that I had to research about later and kind of figure out, but it is a decent little bop. It's not nearly as chart heavy as the first four singles, but it's a pretty nice one. I like it more nowadays. It's just a very warm and sluggish kind of mini power ballad. It's an upbeat kind of good rendition of a wholesome record. And yeah, I mean, it's upbeat, but it's just, you know, when you think of artists that do wholesome records and something a little bit more homely and thought-provoking that just doesn't always work because it's like boring or something like that. I just like Akon's kind of warm energy on this song. It's just very ambient and kind of sprawling and contagious and just how it kind of works out. So this is just a good example of one. It's just a very lazy kind of warm summer day type tune as far as just the just as far as like the sluggishness behind it, but it is kind of a mini power ballad. It's just kind of different from like the typical vibes. This is not like hip hop oriented. This is more world and reggae kind of tinged about it, but it's just kind of got like a this nice, good ambient kind of feeling. So it's a nice one. It's more of a mature kind of song. This is one of the more mellow and kind of matured kind of songs, I would say, but it is compared to the four singles that all kind of had some jive about them. This one's kind of a lot more relaxed and just kind of laid back and refined. But so yeah, that's the concept of the album. So out of 13 songs on here, like I said, the 12th song is I Won't from the European edition. The 13th song is Locked Up Remix. I'm going to go ahead and recommend the 9.5 songs out of 13 I recommend. So those 9.5 songs would be Locked Up, Ghetto, Lonely, Bonanza, Pot of Gold, Trouble Nobody, Don't Let Up, Locked Up Remix, Show Out, and the Almost song is When the Time's Right. So basically almost 10 songs out of 13. This album pretty much got on the cusp of getting a 10 out of 10. But to talk about some of these songs I recommend here, like Trouble Nobody's another one that's very similar to Locked Up and Ghetto. This one works extremely well. This is like a looming, kind of ominous background, kind of club music type feel. Trouble Nobody is like a looming, kind of ominous one. It's some background kind of club music. It's a very edgy cut, and it's similar to Locked Up. Like I was saying, it has some good vibes about it. If you just need kind of some more of like that kind of more sullen and kind of like creeping, kind of like edgy kind of feel of like Locked Up, Ghetto, some of those type moments, just in a more street kind of sense, this is definitely a good one to look up. It's just kind of the concept of just the melodies on this song are great. It's not quite a single, but it's a good album cut. This just has some good vibes about it. Just kind of background music for being at a club, just having some drinks in hand, macking with some women, that type of stuff. Just maybe not so much a dance song, but just kind of a smoozing kind of song, just kicking back a little bit and enjoying things. Like Akon's a pretty lively dude on this album. He definitely felt like he had a pretty lively sense about him. I like the fact that how social and kind of peppy and snappy that Akon kind of is on here. There's some songs like Don't Let Up. There's some songs like Trouble Nobody, Bonanza, When the Time's Right, Show Out, that just kind of show that Akon was kind of having fun when he made this record. So I do like the jive that he kind of had where he was just kind of, he was just kind of dressed to impress, looking fresh, looking snappy, that sort of stuff, just having a good time as far as that kind of goes. It's a good concept, and it's just a great kind of jive as far as that kind of goes. If you do like Lonely and you want another song like Lonely, if you like that chipmunk kind of soul that like Kanye West does, and if you like that chipmunk soul that Kanye West kind of did in the 2000s and the stuff like Lonely from this album, I would say that Don't Let Up is a nice one for that. It's kind of a reparation song for the ladies. It's an R&B gem similar to Lonely, and it has some decent crossover appeal. I mean, it's a decent attempt. I feel like maybe this could have been a single if it had a little bit better chorus or something like that, but it is kind of, it's another kind of reparation song similar to Lonely in that same sort of pitch. But I look at the concept, it just doesn't quite hit quite as heavily as that one. I feel like Lonely was just better executed. But I look at it, it's a good follow-up. It's a definite good kind of another type song to kind of get in that same sort of format if you need more lady songs as far as that kind of goes. It's kind of one that's for strong ladies and that type of stuff. I do like the concept of that sort of thing kind of being pushed around. So it's just kind of, I mean, because it's not just like a typical kind of crooning kind of song. It just really has it really has like some kind of meaning towards it. So I do like the concept. It's kind of like Tupac's Keep Your Head Up. It's a ladies song, and it's kind of, it's a ladies song, but it's also in the concept of kind of a keep your head up type vibe that Tupac would do. So it's a good kind of mixture of Akon being able to pull that one off. So it's another nice one. Yeah, I talked about liking Locked Up Remix. It's another highlight just with Styles P on there. So it's a good rendition. Show Out's a nice one. This is like a midday kind of wrapping things up kind of song. And by that, I mean just getting the rest of your errands done and tasks done and some of that type of stuff. It has a real kind of jivey kind of acoustic guitar licks on the song type beat, or maybe not acoustic, but just kind of guitar licks on the song. It's a spiffy kind of typical day. It's a spiffy kind of typical day leading to like an exciting night. This is one that I would play at like 5:30, 6 p.m. before you're getting ready to pop off for the night, where you're just getting ready to get some jive going and get some drinks in your system and some of that. It's just kind of where the day is kind of more, where I would say the day is kind of somewhat relaxed, but just has enough edge to it where you're still got some excitement in your bones and some of that type of stuff as far as just being able to talk about that sort of thing. So I just kind of look after it like I do like the concept of just like an exciting kind of midday kind of tune that just has like the proper jive. I mean, it's not really a dance club or a club type song or something like that, or really a stepping out kind of song, but it's just kind of one where you're just kind of out and about, maybe just in a residential area, just jiving, that type of stuff, socializing, fraternizing, some of that, but you're just kind of excited and you just have some pep towards you. It's just kind of a good one for getting ready to have a good time. So I like the concept, especially from that being an R&B songs for 2004. This is pretty good. And then the almost song is When the Time's Right. And this is just kind of like a club bop. This is like a jivey kind of dance club hit. It's a ritzy kind of social, has a ritzy kind of social feel about it, but the beat just isn't a total knockout. I would kind of say it's good, but it's kind of like one that needs, this is a decent beat, but it's kind of one that has somewhat of a learning curve. It's just not quite as wholesomely approachable as some of the singles. Like Locked Up, Trouble Nobody, Bonanza are just better choices, but I feel like this does kind of have like some thumping kind of jive about it. It's just a real kind of thumping, pounding kind of beat. It's just kind of off key for Akon. I mean, I like the concept of getting him on some of these jivey songs, but this one just was a little bit more flashy and kind of, this one was just a little bit more flashy and kind of cocky than I was expecting to kind of have on this particular project. But I do like it. I mean, it's just a good concept. I like the concept of getting some R&B jive like this. It's just a very kind of like bravado kind of song for getting some ladies and that type of stuff. It is a good one, but it's just the beat just didn't quite wholesomely hit me as hard. But you can tell that's a pretty decent dance club hit and it's meant for stepping out. So that's a good concept of that. But so yeah, me liking basically 9.5 songs out of 13. I'll go ahead and talk about the songs I didn't enjoy, which I just didn't like the vibes of. And talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy on here, like Journey and I Won't were just kind of poor productions that just were kind of awkward senses of trying to figure out where to listen to them. I Won't pretty much had one of the worst beats on the album. This is very kind of unengaging to listen to and try to figure out a format to actually listen to it. This was not a very clever one to kind of throw on there. Journey was supposed to be kind of like a travel song, but that one just felt like more of like an expedition more so than like something of interest to travel to. And then like Gangsta was kind of a poor one too. I really didn't like this beat. I like the concept of at least getting a song called Gangsta, but the concept behind it just was not interesting in the concept of being able to do it. I just think that the production was just kind of poor. Like Akon did it better on Convicted, I feel like, with songs like Blown Away and some of those type moments, but that beat was just not. I mean, this was trying to be more of like a rap song, just kind of like a standard gangster rap kind of album cut from like a rapper or something like that, but it just didn't quite have the engagement that it needed to. I feel like Akon's just better on songs like Locked Up, Trouble Nobody, and Ghetto. He just nailed that style better on those particular songs, but just Gangsta just didn't really have the correct kind of jive. So but me liking 9.5 songs out of 13, I'm going to give this album basically like a 9.5 out of 10. It's really that good. It's an excellent debut. Another reason why I'm boosting the scores is because it had 5 singles that all hit pretty damn well. All 5 of these were excellent. I mean, there were some multiple songs on here that got over 100 million plays, like Locked Up. There were multiple songs on this album that got over 100 million plays on Spotify. Like, that's the example with Lonely, Locked Up, and Bonanza. They all managed to get over 100 million plays. And there's just some good hits on here. All of the singles really had some crestability, and they're affable, have great melodies, and they're just approachable in terms of like the marketing. This is definitely like a premier R&B artist from the 2000s to go and mess with. So that's definitely kind of the thing. And there's just some quality. There are some good album cuts on here. They don't hit quite as heavily as the singles, but there are some good ones on here like Trouble Nobody and Show Out, and in some cases Don't Let Up in some of those type moments. So there are some nice ones on here to kind of have that extra kind of jive. I would have to say it's got some great overall moments, just blockades of singles and just good moments. He has a pretty charismatic personality and good melodies to kind of help get things together. He just has that right kind of pitch for what was needed, good niche to kind of be in. And then the social score, I'll go ahead and I'm going to give the social score like a 9 out of 10. I feel like I could almost give it a 10, but I think maybe it's just a song or two shy of having another step out kind of gem. Like if Gangsta would have hit harder, and then like I Won't and Journey wouldn't have been on there, I probably would have said that this would have been a 10 out of 10 project as far as like social, because it does have some great moments like Locked Up, Ghetto, Trouble Nobody are all good social club moments. Bonanza's a great one. Lonely's a great one. I feel like Locked Up Remix is great. Show Out's pretty jivey. When the Time's Right's a nice one for the ladies. So there is some great moments on here in terms of like some of these stepping out kind of moments. But I'd have to say it's probably just a song or two short of being like a classic in terms of the social score. But it does have a lot of good jive. And I think your buddies and folks you hang out with would probably enjoy this record too. It's just a good one for your pals as far as that kind of goes, especially with the single. So 9 out of 10. In terms of the future, like Akon has been dropping projects. So that's interesting enough. This is just the fact that Akon has put out some projects. I remember like he took a long break after his Freedom album from 2008. He did drop some mixtapes in 2012, but then he took another long break. But he's been back since about 2019, 2020 or so. So we'll have to get to some more of these. But yeah, there's more Akon on the way. But this is definitely a pretty bolsterous and boisterous kind of project.